This podcast explores the one thing we all crave all day, every day of our lives: connection. Human connection in all its forms, from our need to be connected to ourselves, to something bigger than ourselves, the world around us, and the people in it, for friends and lovers. Welcome to Connecting with John Keegan. Hey, this is Connecting with John Keegan, and today I am actually interviewing the great Stanley George of Stanley's Pharmacy here in the Lower East Side. And I want to tell you a little bit about Stanley. He's a guy that I stumbled upon a couple of years ago. Living in the Lower East Side, I would walk by this really interesting looking shop called Stanley's Pharmacy. And if you've never seen it, well, you're missing out on something. So I would walk by, and it says orange and white signs, and inside it looks like this amazing oasis, but I just didn't know, it's almost like a fishbowl in the sense you can look in and see everything. And I just didn't know what was going on in there. But one day, someone told me, have you ever been to Stanley's? And I was like, oh, that place. And then they were like, yeah, it's totally up your alley. And why it's up my alley is because it's really about holistic healing. It's really a place to come and heal, and at the same time to come and pick up good vibes, and even to meet people, if you're lucky enough to get in. So I did end up coming by, and then we just hit it off right away, and we became friends. And also, he's just been a great source for me living my best life, for me living, the best version of me I can be, the healthiest. And you're going to learn, even today, we're going to tap into a little bit of what I'm talking about. Healthiest isn't just eating right. It's about the way we're being, what we're doing. Now, Stanley is actually a real pharmacist, and that's what's fascinating. He's a real pharmacist, a clinical pharmacist for over 20 years. And then on top of that, he had a vision for really helping people to heal, beyond, medicines, and helping them to really change their habits, change their ways, and teaching them how to heal holistically. And so some of the things he does is when you walk into Stanley's Pharmacy, again, if you're lucky enough to get in, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit, if you walk into Stanley's Pharmacy, he's going to ask you, what are you feeling? Which means, how do you want to feel? What do you, so maybe you're feeling a little down. And so he's going to brew something up for you, or mix you a drink that's going to lift you up. And the drink's going to be all organic and made with the finest things the earth has to offer. Or if you're feeling bloated, he's going to make you something for that. Or if you haven't been sleeping right, he's going to help you with that. And then, of course, if he wants to have a deeper conversation with you about a situation, he really can, and he gets into it on the deepest of levels. And you've done that with me more than one time. And that's what I thought, that's what this podcast is all about. It's about connecting and people becoming their greatest version of themselves, being super connected to themselves so that they can connect to the world around them and the people in it on a whole other level, the level they were meant to. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Stanley George of Stanley's Pharmacy. Hey, Stanley, what's up?
Hey, John, how are you? Good to be here.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for making this happen today.
So happy to be here.
Yeah.
So happy to be with you.
Yeah, well, thanks. You look super cool as usual. And this is just a note. This podcast we're not going to film, so it won't be on YouTube. But in the future, we will film some podcasts that will. And you'll see Stanley has a great Stanley and Stanley's Pharmacy. One of the things you do is you really cover the aesthetic in an amazing way. So you created something that looks and feels and an experience when you walk in here. And even yourself, you've curated as an experience, right? Meaning when you come in during business hours, you're all in white. But if you come in after hours, you're all in black.
That's right.
That's true, right?
There's an AM and a PM.
That's right. AM Stanley and PM Stanley.
Yeah. Right now, we're living a little PM version of
Yeah, because it's day off.
It's
non-pharmacy day.
Exactly. Monday, you got to give the pharmacist a day off on a Monday. Right?
Yeah, especially if pharmacy is a bit of a showman, right? Broadway takes off on Mondays.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. So, but can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I've given a pretty good intro, but really, what are you down here in the Lower East Side? What have you been up to?
Well, uh, what have I been up to? I think the whole project of Stanley's and kind of being ultimately it's about freedom. It was about me finding my personal freedom, and that involved my own pathway to healing, which involved studying it from a medicinal level, right? And also connecting with people, right? That was a lot of healing for me and helping me to heal and work with others in their healing, right? And I don't consider myself a healer. I'm actually a health professional. I'm licensed by the boards, and so forth. So I never get esoteric, but I do try to bring common sense to health practice. And so I was touched to feel the benefits of living a macrobiotic lifestyle. I bought my first juice about 30 years ago before I entered pharmacy school, and was living in the East Village as a musician. It was very punk and hippie in the early 90s, and people doing yoga in Tompkins Square Park, and I think I just absorbed a lot of that what I call space for healing, which has a lot to do with aesthetic, which is what I'm glad you mentioned, because aesthetic is actually quite the opposite of anesthetic, which is known in Western medicine as not feeling, right? We get you to not feel so much, and so much of Western medicine is dedicated to that without really getting to the roots of the problems, which I noticed. And that's why chronic ailments, just people continue to live with those on a daily basis, but without the fundamental understanding of how you got there in the first place and really how to change it and live differently, right? And a lot of that has to do with a lot of, I've been blessed to work in pharmacy for decades now, and we are coming on a whole new theory and pharmacotherapy regarding genes and the Human Genome Project, and now everything is really gene therapy. It's very exciting, and we're starting to realize that a lot of the hereditary diseases that people have actually become activated, right, during certain times of stress, you would say, right? That's ultimately what kills us is life, right? As life happens, all the crazy shit, as our body reacts to it, our DNA starts to fucking unravel, right? And we've got to do our best to create some space for ourselves, our souls, our minds, and our bodies, right? Because life is pushing back at us, right? Trying to cave us in, and we've got to fight back, right? We've got to protect our space for ourselves to exist. How else can your body exist? How else can it, your mind be harmonious, right? And day in, day out, isn't the question, how are you going to learn to live with yourself and others every day? Right? Don't you want to do it well? Don't you want to feel good doing it?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Yeah.
Right?
No, what an amazing perspective on to look at it, that, life is what's going to kill you. Life is what's going to unravel. And, there's ways to prevent us from unraveling these things that will ultimately ultimately trigger things like cancer and Alzheimer's and whatever comes out, or anxiety or depression, or which are the most common things people experience on some level, right?
Absolutely. More so I've seen over the last 20 years with the advent of the smartphone and text messaging and SMS messaging, the whole concept of being available constantly, right? For your careers, for your social life, and so forth, and not having enough space to think and feel and have life unfold a little.
While also being available for the nonstop onslaught of information, like Twitter or
And don't give
news.
me the bullshit that you need it for your social life, because Johnny boy, you and me come from the era of the greatest fucking parties in New York, and like back in the day, and even when everybody thinks about the glory days of New York, I don't remember any Facebook invite.
No,
but somehow
that's right.
you ended up there.
That's true.
And if you didn't, you heard about it.
That's right. You heard
It was
us
a
with the
concept
grapevine.
of rumor.
Yeah.
Right?
So many things. I mean, that's a whole other time. Just before, I mean, the closest you can get to that now is go to Cuba, where they don't really have internet, and people will be hanging out on the street, like in old days, where you hang out on the street and you talk to each other and you have conversations.
And
they still do that there.
Yeah.
But yeah, or you'd go and find your apartment on a board at the supermarket. There would be some board where it's like, there's apartment for rent, there's that.
Absolutely.
All
and
that.
That's where you ran into your girlfriend that blah, 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 and introduced you to whatever. And you would run into your friend on the street, and he would tell you about the party, and then you'd go to a payphone and call your friend and leave a message on his machine.
That's right.
And he would check it at a payphone somewhere, and I certainly life happens a lot quicker now, but that doesn't mean necessarily it's better.
Yeah, well, that's something to get into, and that's something I want to talk about. There's so many things, guys. I'm going to bring, as you can tell, Stanley's loaded, so loaded with information. So I'm going to bring back Stanley. I mean, one thing we're talking about is detoxing from social media, detoxing from your phone. For me personally, it's a problem. Just constantly need to check on, see what's going on out there when it makes no difference at all in my life. So there's little addictions that we have.
Absolutely.
That especially around those iPhones.
Right.
So that's something that we can talk about at one point. All these different ways to get more and more connected to ourselves. But on the dating thing, like me personally, that's something I've coached for the last decade plus, is helping people meet people in real life, in real time, as they're experiencing that. And that still does exist. And really the only way I date is that way. And
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Can we go into that for a moment?
Yeah, sure.
And I know a lot of the audience...
Before you even talk about that, I'm enjoying one of Stanley's alchemical concoctions now. You asked me how I was feeling. I said, you know what? I feel a little bit bloated today. It's like kind of, I've been,
Christmas.
Yeah, it's been Christmas time. I'm overdoing my... my deal, so I felt a little bloated. So you made me something really nice here.
Oh, good.
Yeah, beautiful.
Good.
Like I don't know what's in it, and I don't want to know. Because sometimes you've made me some things where I'm like, what the fuck did this guy get? Like, remember the time I had my last girlfriend was in town. Yeah. And you made me that potion for. Basically power fucking or whatever you want to call it. But it was interesting because most of the time, and this is interesting, most of the time when you give it's for just a man, like here's some pill to give you an erection, right? But what's really fascinating about what you did here is you made these alchemical concoctions, all pure and organic and natural, right? For me and one for her. So it was an experience that it went back to the experience that we shared together, like we're doing something together. And I'll be honest, I really didn't need it. She was really doing it all for me. When we added that in, it was a whole other, I don't know what
glad.
I don't know what happened, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we both, it was like, that's such a different thing than a guy just taking a pill and going to town. But it's like this experience together. Yeah. What an amazing thing.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I felt like as a pharmacist, and by the way, I can fill your Viagra prescription here at Stanley's Pharmacy.
Yeah.
But I just noticed...
But you've never told me ever once to take anything hard like that.
No,
you always showed me the natural way.
No, we try to go in a different route, especially if you're a young, healthy man. Yeah. Absolutely. But seriously, like when Viagra came out, it was not exactly gender neutral. As a matter of fact, with the FDA, it was only approved for use in men. And so there were females that loved it, right? And sometimes they were even, I remember being, some pharmacists wouldn't want to fill their prescriptions. They were like, no, being like really nerdy about it. It's unapproved and blah, 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 blah. And they'd get in fights with the female. Like, blah, 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 blah. But I saw this herbal remedy that I made for you
Yeah.
as being something is exactly it's a gender neutral experience. It's
Yeah.
got to bring both people in, because you don't want to just have a guy like just going like a machine and like, well,
Yeah,
where's
just
the
have-
girl gonna be in that?
yeah.
She's got to be on the same level. She's got to eat the pill too.
Well, I mean,
She's gotta be
sex is
on the
about
same level.
intimacy, and that
Yes.
creates intimacy. It's an experience we're doing together instead
And
of here's
being
not
on the
something I'm
same
doing
level.
to you. You know.
Right? Being on that same level.
Yeah. That's
why
what
you
it
gotta
felt.
have a
That's
male
what
and a
was fun
female.
about it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was.
Well, I'm so glad you too. I know you work in a lot of dating thing. One thing I wanted to talk about that I know we've gotten in conversations here. Because by the way, once you're inside, we pretty much love to talk about anything. Anything
Yeah,
goes,
that's right.
right?
That's
And so
right, yeah.
One of the conversations that you and I had gotten into with the crew was how when we had grown up, right, in the 80s, and, there was no social media or dating or anything, but when a school dance came around or you liked a girl, you had to muster up it was a coming of age in manhood. It was a coming of age in manhood to ask a girl out. You as a
Yeah,
man
that's
had
right.
to develop the courage and fend off all the other guys out there and deal actually with the rejection. And if anybody who has studied anxiety, one of the things that humans as we do is we'll do anything to avoid anxiety. Right?
Yeah, that's so true.
And if that means face-to-face
comfortable.
communication, and there's another workaround about it and so forth, and not having to deal with your core self, right?
Yeah,
and
that's
your first of all, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of digital dating and meeting somebody live, well, if you can walk up to somebody and start talking to them right away and figure out whether they're a good match for you to go, you're already on your first.
Sorry about that. I was
Tinder.
getting to the bottom of that one. Yeah,
You're already on your first date in a sense,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
In the digital realm, right?
Yeah.
You've already met, and you can assess that. And I think the time spent, working through the digital workaround and so forth, as opposed to just walking up to somebody and connecting.
Preaching to the choir, bro.
Right?
You're preaching to the choir, but it is so true,
Right.
And it is so important. It's so important for and I don't want to go into a long spiel about this because I've spent 10 years going on
Yeah,
about it.
absolutely.
But the truth is it really is. To me, and I've explored so many healing modalities, so many ways to become me, so many ways to become the best version of John. To go out and experience those fears and that uncomfortable feeling, that discomfort, that fear of rejection,
Yes.
fear of not being good enough, that to go out and go from inaction to action, to go from not doing to doing, to go from that daily, frequently, and becoming a person who's connected to the world around them and connecting to the people in them and make you there's nothing more powerful. Right? Some people like to. Ever since I was little, I always noticed they always trivialize dating. It's like these dumb dating shows they put on. Everything's the dumb way they talk about it in magazines and newspapers. But what it is, it's about people connecting, people getting to know each other, and not just with each other, but with themselves and the world.
Yes.
It's about becoming you. It's about
Face
developing
to
that
face.
face to face. It's
Right.
very real.
Yes.
And I mean, there's so many things you skip when you're face to face. So many people. First of all, the online dating app doesn't work that well for most men, right? I see some guys with some swag. It works well for them. In certain apps, it works better for them. But generally, it's in the terms of getting lots of hits and getting lots of dates, it works really for women. But really, for quality dates, it's like getting a job at less than minimum wage.
Yeah.
A less than minimum wage job, because a lot of it's just bad news, and especially like the days of Tinder, I think honestly was one of the reasons that women in the world became so angry. Suddenly they were given all this power like never before. Like
Yes.
I can swipe, and some guy can even just come over and we're fucking.
Yes.
That was never given to them before.
It's true.
And so it's like you kind of lose the idea that I look like everything is kind of more anonymous, or we can just go on these dates and there you are. But it also destroyed courtship in men, because now girls were throwing these pictures of themselves, often in bikinis up. It's very sexual.
Yes.
Maybe women didn't understand what that does to a man's brain, but it really hits it, the reptile
And
brain.
maybe they loved it.
Maybe they loved it, but guys would show up and they'd skip the courtship.
Yes.
And they were also showing up to girls, and this is the biggest thing. And this is brutal. They were showing up to date women they would not have walked up to at a cafe or in the street or in any sober situation, because it was like, oh well, she wants to have sex.
Right.
And it's like Bill Burr said in his stand-up comedy. He said, we go around all day like we would have sex with all of you, except the only reason we don't is because you won't. So it's like, so it just started to devolve that courtship, and I think it created a lot of anger in the world, and a lot of deep feelings of divide between the sexes there, and that's why we're sitting in that now.
I agree with you. And I think the fundamental part of human growth in that experience, it becomes absent, right? When you could just walk up to somebody and connect with them and grow from that experience.
Yeah.
Right? And then one of my fans.
Oh, we got a Stanley fan outside the window here now. We're in the fishbowl. We're in the fishbowl.
Yeah, we are in the fishbowl.
There he is, one of the characters in, he thinks he's on camera. He's one of the characters in the Lower East Side out here knocking on the window. All right, cool. So, so what were you saying? You were saying something interesting, yeah.
Well,
listen.
Take that guy.
Yeah.
I think that happened for a reason. God bless him.
That's right.
You know what?
Yeah.
He was connecting, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
Face to face.
Yeah, he was.
You know what? And you know what? I know that guy.
Yeah.
I know he's a good guy, and I don't text him. But we see each other. When we see each other, we say what's up.
Yeah, what's
we connect,
up? Yeah.
Right?
No, that's right.
And I think that's how life used to be.
Well, I mean, there's always been people running away from fear, and there's always been people who are afraid to step outside their comfort zones. We just found a whole bunch of new ways to do it.
Right.
And but at the same time, and I'm an optimist, born that way, and I find it pays off well. At the same time, we're becoming aware of the need for connection even more and more and more. So many things that we could take this conversation in the direction of. Like, I could interview you about your avant-garde behavior. Right? I could interview you about so many things. Like, just as we're recording here, the amazing space we're in, right? What I love about it for my soul is I always feel like I need to be outside. And now we are outside, but we're inside, with all the windows, and so you're a part. It feels like we're a part of it all the time, and we're just like floating in space. So that's something very healing about the place. Just the energy of the place to me is that we're part of it. We're not disconnected from it. So I imagine you, like you said, a lot of that you did for yourself even. I imagine as a pharmacist at times you were probably in the back of something for a while with no windows or something. Is that true? Yeah, and you're like, the hell with it. I'm going to be right all surrounded by life. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think even my path to becoming a pharmacist has to do with my journey in evolution, in healing and personal transformation. And all of that. And I'm so proud of this place because it really just crystallizes and embodies a lot of that journey. And that perfection is captured here.
Well, what do you think, when we talk about a human being, a person, a man or a woman, when we talk about, I was going to make some kind of joke, but I'm not going to. But when we talk about, how can we be our ultimate version of ourselves? How can we live the life we're meant to live, which is the greatest life of all time. And I really believe that every one of us alive today is born in this time for a reason, because we want to live the greatest life of all time. There's so much beauty and so much possibility, so much, so much information and so much accessible to us.
Yeah.
That's both, negative. That there's a lot of that you can fall into the negative traps of that, like social media addiction or news addiction or swiping your way to try to meet somebody or all those things, or you can really, gravitate towards all the powerful benefits of that, like all the information that we have, just this podcast itself, the simplicity that we can record this and share it with people and share the knowledge that you've gathered over with your supersonic brain over your life, and it can be put out and someone can listen to it and become part of who they are. We've never lived in any time like this at all. In fact, like Benjamin Franklin, one of the guys I've always idolized, if you read his autobiography, which is really everyone should read. One of the greatest minds of all time wrote an autobiography, and it's really a how-to live an awesome life book. But one of the things he did back in those times, he would go around everywhere. When he traveled, he would have an entire trunk filled with all his books. The books, and only very rich people or very, very smart, learned people had things like that. So he would show up at kings and statesmen's and people's homes, with his books, and that was a big part of what it's like to be somebody like him or Leonardo da Vinci. There was books, that information that they studied and they knew, and they would have to, it would be a huge deal, like with horse and buggy carrying that stuff around. We have hundreds of millions and billions of times more information inside of our pockets all day, that we have access to that he never did. So in this time that we're alive, how can we, just in a general sense, and I throw this at you for you to answer, because I know I want to get into specifics in a moment, but in a general sense, what's important for me to live my best life? What's important, health-wise, for me to live my best life? What are the most important things for me to fully function at the level that I can? And I can say, like, one of the times I came to you, I couldn't sleep. I was having some serious sleep issues, like the worst of my life. I'd fall asleep and I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and then I couldn't fall back asleep, and then I'd sleep late, and then I was kind of walking around, easily agitated, annoyed, and I was living like that, functioning like that. And you really taught me how so much. And it changed how I live and how I look at sleep. Like, it used to be like, oh, well, if the less sleep I get, the better. That's even better, and I get more function. Where now I look at it, I'd rather sleep an extra hour or two than work out. Because I function.
You'll get better results.
Yeah, I'm totally relaxed all day. I'm totally me. I'm totally able to deal with the horns in New York. Things that would be hard for me to just to deal with aren't even things.
Yes.
So sleep
Right.
is so powerful. It's one of those things, and we're going to go a little more into that today.
We can.
Yeah.
Sleep is one of those
Yes.
things.
What are some other things?
Well, to me, it's funny. Health is so important in living your best life, because you're only reminded of that, unfortunately, when you lose it, right? When something happens and it just crawls out of left field, and you're like, well, boom, oh my God, and you're like all messed up, and your homies are looking for you, and but you're all messed up, and what's going on, so there is this concept I call of the Adam and the Eve, right? Your perfect state, right? Your perfect state of health. I truly believe our bodies were born as heavenly beings in a perfect state of health, and that's what we always represent, except that really life and death add up to an accumulation of all our good habits plus or minus our bad habits, right? Equals life and death. And then
That's
wild
a great
card.
quote. I just want to, before you hit the wild card, all our good habits minus our bad habits, find that balance between life and death. And I've always said this about aging, is people are really generally think they just have to get old and dilapidate. And to me, aging is really just a series of bad habits catching up with you that you do day in and day out.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. I'm not sure if anybody knows. I think I mentioned it earlier about gene therapy and so forth. But
Let's get your genes fixed. Yeah. Yeah, you need a break or anything?
No.
We'll just edit it out. Yeah, the gene therapy. You need a break?
what were you saying a little before that?
Well, we had the wild card coming.
Oh,
You
yeah.
remember?
We
That
go
was
back
the
to
wild
the
card.
wild card.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's start back with.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Okay.
what's the wild
All
card?
right, all right. Let's go back to the wild card
Yeah.
before we go into anything else.
Yeah,
Because the
'cause
wild card
is what I want to know.
Yes,
That's why I came
because-
here today.
well,
the wild card, because
right.
the wild card's the wild card, right?
Right. Well, there are several wild cards, right?
Yeah. Okay. It's not just one wild.
There's a couple
it's not
joker
like
cards
a
in every deck,
simplistic
right?
card
And
game.
and when it comes to life, certainly, and we talked a little bit about life happening and how that managing that can be so stressful that it unravels your health and your DNA, and it leads to the process of aging and creating this space for it and so forth. Well, what happens if you have all of that and you just get hit by a car? That's the wild card, right? Well, yeah, life is that those chance things can happen. Your genetics, right? Something out of left field happens and you've lived the best life, but it's come through your lineage and it had nothing to do with you. Well, some people call that Darwinism, right? Maybe that's the case. Maybe it's just the hands, it's the cards that life dealt you. But even still, I think in order for you to, while you're here, let's just say, you want to connect, right? Until that happens, you want to be your best self.
Yeah.
And because who knows where that might lead, and who knows, you may live to be 150, or they may figure out, the ultimate cure for aging, and you could live forever, right? So, but even still, I want everybody to think that we are born in this perfect state of health, and this Eastern philosophy, right? Rather than the Western cause and effect of when something happens, treat it, but that you're born into this perfect state of health, and when you fall out of it, or when life car crashes into you, right, and makes you fall out of it, that there are things in your behavior, right, that you can do to protect your health, right, and maintain your health. Because when your health is lost, I don't care whether it's insomnia, the flu, or whether it's a chronic ailment that all of a sudden has crept up because you've been doing all this wrong things and ignoring them for way too long, which is, I believe, a form of self-hatred, to be honest with you.
Wow. Yeah.
So, but we'll go into that. That's something else, too.
Yeah, self-hatred.
But
And the
doing
effects.
these things every day when you do have your health and your body is actually at its optimum, your mind can function at its optimum, right? Because if your back hurts or even if it's a toothache, or maybe if you've got a terrible cold and I know everybody here has experienced that, where it's like the wind has been knocked out of you in a sense and you can't even get through your day. And we are living in a time and age where we do need to get through our days. We all have a calling in life. If you haven't found it yet, you better, because we need you. Humanity is out there calling for you, right? And you have it. So, and so we all have our duties, not only to ourselves in creating the space that we need to to be ourselves and maintain our optimal selves. But we also have a duty to humanity, right? And a servitude that connects you, right? That plugs you in to this connection.
Right.
And you know what? If you don't choose it and you don't want to be in control of it, we are all born with this free will, right?
Yeah.
To obey those callings. And it can be hard, much like conditioning your body for exercise in a sense. And you go through this muscular, painful development, but then you're a new being, so in a sense, right? And if you obey those callings, I do believe that's a personal freedom, right? And becoming who you are, that you can go through. And I think that's what this crystallizing this place here, this pharmacy, exists in my life and the path. And so,
What do you say to people who you tapped on, having a purpose or a calling or a mission? Something that helped me out in that area of my life. Originally I felt called to be an actor. I felt drawn to do that for many reasons, and I did it. And I did it for a long time, and I got to do a lot of plays and experience a lot of cool things and some movies, and I had some successes. I had successes for myself and successes in some senses, but I definitely never had. We got a call coming. Is that a caller? It is our first caller. Let's. It's our first call. Yeah, let's see what's going on here. But I definitely had some successes, and. But at one point it just wasn't adding up to the big bucks, to the money part of it, and at one point I really feel in a man's life it's really important for him to be able to generate income, and it's really important. And my goal as an actor wasn't to be a hairy fairy guy. It was to be to create more and more and more, and so that wasn't happening. So I started looking for other paths to that. And I was drawn at that time to becoming, the things you're talking about, to this. I was being exposed to these ideas that made total sense to me, which is that we are born perfect. And instead of this idea that you have a chemical imbalance, or you're broken, or you're this, or you're that, all these ideas that we're fucked up, in this chemical companies who call themselves pharmaceutical companies, so they're gonna cure us. They're gonna cure us.
Right.
So that really used to make me angry, because I remember, like, in my family, people have depression, and then it was like I never really did. And then after college, coming out of college with no game plan and nothing going on and living back in the small town, I got pretty fucking depressed trying to get a job and all that. And then my mom convinced me, John, it's in the family, you got to take the pill. And I argued with it over and over. Finally, I started to take the pill. I remember it was uplifted briefly, and then my penis wasn't working. And I say to the doctor, I was 24, I say to the doctor, I get a girlfriend, I'm not, it's not, nothing's going on down there. And he says, well, are you trying to have children right now? I said, no, I'm 24. We want to make a 24-year-old depressed and make his penis not work. I mean, what the fuck, right? So then I was on that, and then it was some other thing for this, and so it was all these like depression things. And then finally it was like when I started to learn the power of nutrition and food, and that actually these guys, I knew inherently that this isn't right what they're talking about. The whole thing's messed up.
Yeah.
Even the psychologist, even all that stuff, it's so often. I remember I went to a hypnotherapist once, and I said, this doctor said when I was 12 I had OCD, and he said, there's no such thing. And I was like, what? There's another way to look at the world? There's other ways to see the world and break beyond this idea that... Because the first thing they say to you is what's your disorder? Everybody's a disorder.
Right.
Or multiple disorders. And everybody's this. And they keep going into that. Everybody's a disorder in their version of the world. And I don't want to take away from the great things that they do. I do get a little riled up because I don't like seeing the world. Everyone's a disorder.
Well, if we all
everyone's
have
sick
disorders,
all the time.
they did it to us.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Well, I'm just saying that's a way that they look. That's a way. One of the many ways you can look at the world.
But it's up to you and I to make sense of it. Right.
Yeah.
So we're the ones, and so I think there are certain paths that are laid out between medicine, psychiatry, all kinds of pathways in medicine. But it's up to each individual to find their path to health, because nobody can say that this is going to work for you, and as you're going through it, there are, especially when you're going through medicine, what's great, what I love about Western medicine.
Yeah, tell me what you love about it.
Well, it's the pinnacle of science. Hey, if I got shot, take me to the level 1 trauma center at Bellevue. They got a fucking helicopter landing, right? And they can save your life. These are the miracles of Western science, right? And even if you are born, we are born perfect, right? But physically, there may be things that we may have to overcome and so forth, right?
One of my legs is shorter than the other.
Yeah. Well, Western medicine, there's so many fixes for that, right?
Well, I just put a little rubber piece in my shoe and I'm fine now.
But
it took me like
just
30 years to figure that out.
But sometimes, yes, and the pathway to that, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not a quick fix, or it's so simple and it's an aha moment, right? But when we talk about our physical health, our emotional health, even your emotional health can derail you for a day. Has anybody out there been emotionally hijacked for a moment, right? Whether it's an anxiety attack or depression, maybe there's a trigger moment, right? Or often life circumstances and inflection points in your life bring intervals of time where a young man or woman, or it's like, I thought I was supposed to be an actor, an actress, what's happening to me? And you're going through that painful growth and that transformation of becoming who you are, right?
Yeah, a little spilled cup there. It's cool. Yeah. No, but that's good. No, I was going off. I was getting riled up over my negative experiences of that. But yeah, I'm definitely not bashing all of psychologists or doctors. I don't want to do that. But the reason why it's easy to bash is because it's taken hold as the only way, or as the pinnacle, as anything other than that.
Well, there's too much emphasis, I think, in that algorithm given to the practitioner in terms of. And I don't mean this in terms of like initial treatment, whether you've got an infection and you rush to the hospital, you get a gunshot wound, or there's like something very serious like cancer and whatnot. But once you're on the level of therapy where you're being managed on a plan, right? I don't care whether it's emotional or physical or what, you've got to, it's up to you, the person, the patient, right? We're now in this new consciousness where when you go to the hospital, nobody's a mind reader. Your psychiatrist is not even a mind reader, right? They're asking you questions. So you have to become conscious. You have to transcend physically, mentally, spiritually what you're going through. One of my favorite stories of healing is the story of Joseph Pilates, and the story of if anybody loves exercise, doing Pilates, it's a fundamental in a lot of these routines, and yoga incorporates a lot of Pilates too. And but anyway, Joseph Pilates was a world famous ballet dancer, and World War I happened, and he was actually injured. He was shot, and he was bedridden, and for months and months on end, and he was losing all his flexibility and so forth, and actually was likely he wasn't going to be able to dance again from his injury, except that while in his hospital bed, he created a whole series of exercises that would rehabilitate him out of that hospital bed. So in a sense, Western science, as limited as it was at that time, or as great as it was for what we knew at the time, could only do so much. So it was up to Joseph Pilates to transcend that, and in his awareness, and in not the anesthetic and the cutting off of the feeling, but the actual aesthetic and the feeling of his situation, right? Was he able to transcend it and create these exercises that not only healed him, but myself and thousands of others for over 100 years, right? And he created a science out of it.
Is in physical therapy and stuff. You go
Yes.
to a physical therapist. I did once. They
Yes.
basically taught me Pilates.
And people who don't realize it, and they have back pain, and you go to the doctor, and listen, I've had to have those. I've been in accidents and stuff, and I've had shots where boom, they get you back and going. But if you're not incorporating a holistic approach, right, to something like that, where you're developing an awareness, because listen, everybody's trying to go to the doctor, right? And the doctor can only do, there's only so much even I can do for you. But it's up to every individual to develop the awareness of his situation and how to live with it, right? Live with yourself and others on a daily basis.
Well, what you taught me, let's just go. And one thing I wanted to just finish back when we were talking about purpose. I remember I read this book, famous book now by, The 4-Hour Workweek, if you remember that book.
Yes.
Yeah. So when I read that book, The 4-Hour Workweek, and I keep blanking on his name right now. It's one of the most famous self-help guys out there. But when I read that book, it was a game changer for me because I was in that state of, okay, the acting thing isn't turning into a career for me. And I was drawn to self-development and learning about these kinds of things we're talking about. And I was also really into connecting with women at the time and really becoming social. And I was also, as an actor, I was still trying to ascend to, to some big breakthrough. And one of my limits was I would shut down around really successful people in that field because I felt like I wasn't achieved enough, And then, so I was really learning how I could be more social and be more confident in those situations, not just meeting women that whenever it would be the same kind of problem would be when I would get talking to a woman I really desired. I wasn't being myself all of a sudden. I couldn't, I was being blocked. So I had to break through those blocks for myself.
Yeah.
And I did do it all by myself.
Yeah.
There was no one else to learn from.
Yeah.
And I did it all in broad daylight.
Yeah.
And I faded it in kind of B.F. Skinner style for behavior modification. I modified my behavior and fading through past my anxieties and all that.
Yes.
And then I would do the same thing.
A huge part of personal development,
human
development.
Yeah, and I would just basically challenge my fear of rejection on street corners, in cafes, in everyday places, because I wanted to meet really interesting people. I didn't.
Right, being conscious of your limitations, whether they're behavioral, physical, mental,
and
right?
transcending them,
and transcending them,
and
because that's the first part of transcending that, right? Is feeling it, and becoming aware of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that's how you can circumvent it, navigate around it, and deal with it, right?
Yeah.
And grow from
that.
And then in that interval. I think it's so interesting. You, by the way, John, thank you so much for sharing with all of us this journey, because a lot of people, they would go down a pathway where they feel like they're supposed to be the actor, the artist, or the accountant, or you name it. We can go from A to Z. And then they're like, wait a minute, I thought I was just following myself, my instincts and the path. But then if you look at the bigger picture of life, from however long you're going to live, call it 0 to 60 or 120, but I do believe we live many lives, right? And we have many purposes. And all of those cumulatively, just like all the good habits and the bad habits, cumulatively add and subtract throughout the day, right? In your path during these intervals, right? When you were an actor, think of all the karma you were working out within yourself.
Right. Yeah, right.
Right? That led you to this now.
Right.
To where you can reflect on these experiences for people. And who knows where you will be 10 or 15 years from now. But may it be your best self at that time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, let's look then, when we're going back then. And the quote I wanted to say from that book, 4-Hour Workweek, and it wasn't that I didn't, I got a lot out of that. And, it just took, all you needed was the idea that there was another way. That's really what I got out of it. There was another way I could follow. But the thing that really struck me, because I was following a faulty paradigm my whole life of there'll be a calling, and I was getting pretty bitter at the moment. At that time, it's like I thought I had a calling, and the calling,
Yes, that's
and I answered the
natural.
call, and the universe
Yes.
or whatever, however you want to say, God didn't deliver here. What's
Yeah.
going on? So, but then he that one quote
Very
changed. That
common.
one quote changed my life to this day. Whenever I feel like this, and you just said it, we have many purposes. And if you go to Eckhart Tolle, if you're walking across the room to pick up the phone, your purpose is to walk across the room.
Yeah.
Be here now.
Yeah.
But but this purpose, he said, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I only know what I want to do with the next 3 to 6 months of my life, and then I get to work. And like right now, I want to do a podcast. So I get to work, and I want to connect. I want to be more connected and help people connect more. So that's my purpose right now.
I want to do it with you.
Yeah, that's sweet. Here we are. Yeah, here we are. Right,
Yeah.
we're doing it, and we're creating something new, and hopefully someone's listening.
Yes.
And if you are, hopefully it's
Does
helping you
anybody-
or helping illuminate you in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's so many things we could tap into and talk about. But I think we really have tapped into something along the way here today. And it's about this idea of living out our best selves. And one of the biggest things you tapped on, and this is the same thing, when I came to you about communing with your dreams, and when I came to you about my sleep, you gave me an entire speech, and we're going to come back another time and really get into this, because it's not something we can gloss over or should. Just like, because that's the main problem in Western medicine is here's a pill to answer it, right? When actually you got to change your ways. You got to become aware, and you got to change your own ways. And I know a lot of people on sleeping pills, and they're very, having all kinds of weird issues, including some people killing themselves on them, right?
Yeah.
Some people think that Chris Cornell killed himself because he was on the sleeping pills. So, but I've seen friends, like actually a friend of mine who was a cancer doctor. I watched him when I take one of these sleeping pills, and then he started like being real weird and goofy and saying weird things, and then he just passed out.
Yeah.
It's creepy, man.
Yeah.
Like, why?
I know.
But you talked to me, and immediately I was telling you, because I was really going through it, and I was like, I reached out to you, and you said, look, you got to come in, we got to talk, we got to sit down, and I got to go through this with you. And you spent like an hour with me.
Yeah.
And we basically, I call that chapter coming soon to you guys, communing with your dreams. And basically you went through, you basically interviewed me on how I'm living my life. And there was many areas, including excessive amounts of matcha, right? But also there was so many other things I was and wasn't doing that was disrupting my sleep.
Yeah.
And now I'm sleeping amazing.
Great.
Thank you. And it was, but it was really about, just give you guys a teaser of when that comes is, it was like, you've got to make a routine around sleeping. You have to have things that trigger you to want to fall asleep. Like, so for example, put on your sleepy time pajamas or get whatever it is you do there. Brush your teeth at the same time every night. Light a candle, dim all the lights, wear the red glasses when you're looking at the screen. Don't do the screen a couple hours before bed. I still am not perfect at this stuff, but I got the red glasses, and I do have a system for sleeping now, a routine around sleeping, just like I've developed a pretty good morning routine, which changed my life. So these and that's something I want to get into with you. Oh my God, I'm so excited. This is coming up for us, right?
Okay.
We're going to get into routines around sleeping, around morning, and how creating these routines create the ultimate success.
Because building a life routine is really, because life really adds up, right, to what we do day in, day out, which is really a system of habits. And you're either aware of them or you're not. If you're not aware of them, you're usually doing your worst habits. You're letting your brain and your appetites dictate all of your habits. And if you, when you become woke, but you do your best to
I like
conscious.
the word awakened, because awoke became like a political correct thing.
All right.
We don't want that.
Cut in, cut out, right? But when you make attempts to awaken to your best self, because it's work, it's a life work. Awakening to your best self is a life's work, right? And it unfolds, and that's what life is about, and discovering your life purposes as life unfolds, right? But also always being present, right? And always being kind to yourself, and others, you know, and
That's
that means taking care of yourself, right? Kindness to yourself and loving yourself. And only in taking care of yourself and feeling love for yourself can you love others and have more to give and love others with, right? And in that way, when you are strong and healthy, then you can take care of others and help others as well, right? And this is how we feed connection, right? Is by first taking care of yourself, first and foremost. You know, physically, spiritually, mentally, if you need space from people. So many times, don't you just get bounced around during the holidays, being in, you know, and it's really important to just take some of those moments, whether they be through exercise, meditation, reading, or whatever. And most importantly, communing with your dreams, remembering your dreams, right? In waking life. I personally, I don't know about you, but I remember some dreams I had when I was a kid. I know these phenomenon exist, definitely, but your dreams, you know, Carl Jung and all these great psychologists like Freud, but they describe waking life for you. They kind of make sense of it in a way.
We're gonna get more into that next time because
All right,
that's something I want to go so into. I mean, because it's so
definitely gonna do that.
powerful,
Yeah.
right?
So
we're gonna
we
come
need
back like literally very
all right,
soon.
so
Yeah.
at the very least, let's
Yeah.
just know, kids, boys and girls, right? All our gender neutral people out there, that it is important to honor your dreams and your by creating time for your sleep. Right?
That's a really powerful. I mean, listen, it's it's such an underrated thing. It's almost like, oh, we value if you get no sleep. No, sleep, enjoy. Obviously, get up and do something. But sleeping and resting is we're designed to do that. We need to do it. And then when you are awake and you're well rested, you function
That's how
such
you're
a
best
higher
out.
level.
That's how you work the 4-hour work week.
That's how the magic happens. That's when the
Yes.
magic can come in. You're not
Yes.
just, getting by on Subway sandwiches and
Yes.
lack of sleep.
Yes.
So I mean, geez, we could really get into that.
We could get into
we're gonna
that. I
get
can't
into
wait.
this.
I can't wait.
We got so much good stuff coming up. As you guys can see, Stanley's a star, and so Stanley, it's interesting here in the shop because you really are very selective about who you let in, and you have your reasons for that. And I'm happy to be in and not looking in right now, But anyone can come up to the window and order one of your, you can ask and say, hey, I'm feeling this way, Stanley, hook me up.
Absolutely.
And you will make them something magical.
I never discriminate at the
No,
window.
so in that sense, the window, anyone can come up. And then also, you provide something so unique. And I always wished, I used to wish there was someone I could go to like this. I always did. I was like, because especially once I told you, I figured out that that I'm, in the holistic healings. I'm into this way. That I wish there was someone I could contact whenever I want to work on some part of my health or some part of my health needs attention, that I could contact them, or someone I could go and just talk to. And the reality is you are that guy. And
thank you.
My hope is that one day there'll never be another guy like Stanley, but there'll be some system, in every city and every, where there's someone like you.
We've got to
where
bring
they
them
can
across
talk.
the country.
Yeah,
that's what's got to happen.
Yeah, well, right now the point is they can contact you and set up a health consult.
Absolutely.
I don't know, in person. I've sent friends of mine over, and it's changed their lives, including my best friend, me. And then, but that people can also call you or Skype with you. Is that something you do?
Yeah. People can call me. They can set up appointments and so forth.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They can contact me through email, Stanley at stanleyspharmacy.com, and absolutely, it's let me be your ambassador to health.
Excellent. Amazing. So, this is Stanley at stanleyspharmacy.com, and I'm John Keegan of theawakenedlifestyle.com, and we are here on Connecting with John Keegan, and this is Stanley and John Connecting. See you next time.
See you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Connecting with John Keegan.